doggy. Hi, Amie. Do they make noises?
Right now, just peeping.
So cute. Just what?
They just peep for now.
What a pretty baby.
I'm Amy and this is A-Star Reads, and it's time for Sunday Sum Up. So it's been a really good week. I have gotten a lot of accomplished school-wise. I still have a long ways to go. I have a lot due next Wednesday. So this weekend, especially the second part of the holiday weekend, I'll be doing a lot of homework. But it was an exciting week because we have company. We've got a Magda and it's really been fun. We've just been catching up and spending time together, eating a lot of good stuff. Going to different fun places and trying out different delicious delicacies and talking about books, of course. And that's been a wonderful time. And so it's been a really nice week. As far as reading goes, I have 2 books to review for you and I have a pretty decent sized haul, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And then I will catch up on the books that I'm currently working on, and that's pretty much it. So I hope you're having a wonderful week, and let's get started with those book reviews. May 24th, and I have finally finished Split Infinity by Piers Anthony. I picked this book up because on my March TBR, yes, way back in March, I had landed on one spot that was, what are they reading? And I have my little pot of other booktubers, and I picked John from Hey Y'all Listen Up. And one of John's favorite authors is Piers Anthony. In most of his videos, he talks about different Piers Anthony's books he's working through. So I thought if I'm gonna be checking out this booktuber, I wanna make sure I pick Piers Anthony because it just made the most sense. It's what I think of when I think of John. So I wanted to try out the first in the Apprentice Adept series, and this is a sci-fi fantasy, like a mixture sci-fi fantasy, and apparently this is like one of the first times that sci-fi and fantasy was really blended together. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's kind of some of the things that I read. And this was written in 1980, and the thing that this fulfills for me was for my Aurelium Gear Up for my bone conduit. This fulfilled my bone conduit because there was a unicorn horn on the front. At least in real life, unicorns, narwhals are made actually from tusk, from tooth, so it is considered a bone. I would consider it a bone. So that was what I chose for my Gear Up, and I have finally finished my Gear Up for Aurelium, so I can really dive into my Aurelium Spring Equinox TBR. So starting out, I should say that it is really hard to pick another booktuber's favorite book or favorite author and have to review it because it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to, you feel, am I gonna like this? Am I not gonna like this? I was thinking back to when I had read Persuasion by Jane Austen, and it was one of my favorite books. I absolutely loved it, and John read it about the same time and did not care for it. Gave it like 3 stars or something like that, and wasn't a fan. So it was like, okay, so that's a good indicator that we're gonna have slightly different taste. This was fun in a lot of ways, but it wasn't really written for me or for my taste. And so I was feeling like 3 stars throughout the majority of reading this. I would say that based on how much I didn't enjoy the ending of this, and I know that this is the first in the series, so obviously the end is going to continue on to other books. It wasn't that I didn't like the cliffhanger, I just didn't like how the ending resolved, and because of that I would probably give it a 2.75. I am officially going to say 3 stars, but the ending just didn't do it for me. I didn't like how it ended, and so that just kind of makes me a little bummed because I had a lot of fun with this. There were a lot of elements to this that did and didn't work for me. For one, it is a fun fantasy. I agree with John when he said that there is great world building in this. The 2 lands of Phase and Proton and how they're kind of mirrors of each other, and yet they're so different because they're basically in different dimensions. I thought that was really cool. I also really liked the sci-fi elements that were in Proton and then more of the fantasy elements that you get from the magical world of Phase. I thought that was cool, and I thought the transitions between both were really neat because it felt like you were transitioning in time, even though you may have been, but they're kind of supposed to be existing at the same time from our characters' perspective and from the characters in these places' perspective. But it does feel like the way that these two worlds present themselves, that you're moving back and forth in time. There was a lot of the plot that I enjoyed. I thought that some areas were dragged out a little too much, but I thought it was interesting. It was a very strong adventure story. And this was one of the things I had said when I had read Neverending Story or the Book of Three, the Prydain series, is that I don't know that I enjoy older fantasy as much. I read The Hobbit, I read Lord of the Rings, I liked them well enough, but do I really enjoy older fantasy, which was a lot more adventure-based and plot-driven? Or am I more into character-driven books, which is, I think, much more the theme of fantasy nowadays? Not completely, not with every author, but I definitely see a shift in the way that fantasy was done in older fantasy novels versus how fantasy is done now. But I think that based on my love of character-driven stories and getting to know the characters really well, I am, I think, more interested in that. And so part of the reason why these books don't work as well for me is because I want to like or know the characters a lot more, spend more time in their emotional growth or, you know, falls. You don't get that quite as much from these older fantasies, which is just something that I think that I'm finding is not to my taste. Another thing that can be said for Piers Anthony and this story in general is, if you look up the reviews, there are a lot of people that call it misogynistic and stuff, and I know that that might not be fair, especially when you consider the time that it was written, and this is definitely outdated in the views that it uses towards women and relationships with women and how women are supposed to behave and act with men. If I think about it from an outside perspective, not from my perspective of how I feel as a woman, how I want to be viewed as a woman, if I think about it from like, okay, what do I look for when I'm looking for a fantasy romance as a woman? What do I want in the male characters and stuff? And do I objectify men in when I'm looking at it as a romance perspective? Then, you know, it would be fair for me then to call this a fantasy romance for men. And I know that that's going to sound strange, but the reality is that this wasn't really written for me. It was written for a man's perspective and from a man who wants to appease to the male audience. And that shouldn't matter so much. You know, it's a fantasy and this is an adventure story, but the reality is that Style, the main character, and his relationships with women is a very large part of this book. It's a very large part of this book. Style is this serf who lives on Proton, and he is a jockey because of his height. And that was another thing that was a little irritating, was his fixation on his height. How much he feels that the world places such a barrier on him because of his height. And granted, I realize that height and society can be difficult, but because he's someone who plays in the games, he's good at everything. He's made sure that he's versatile in every single thing. And every situation that came up that was a challenge, he faced and he succeeded. He was able to succeed every single time. And so that was it was a little like he's complaining all the time about how much he is just treated like crap. But every single person he comes up against, he talks to, actually shows him that they respect him for what he is and what he can offer. And even though maybe some people say things about his height that do bother him, and understandably, nobody should be saying things like that, he always proves himself to be incredibly superior to any other person. I don't know, it's hard to say because it just felt like he had such a privileged existence, despite being a serf, granted. But his existence as a serf was every single thing that could go right for him did go right. And he had one of the best experiences of these serfs. And yet he considered himself this outcast that nobody liked, that everybody couldn't stand or treated poorly because he was short. And I just didn't see that in all his interactions that he had with anybody else in this story. I didn't see that. The games were really fun in Proton, the games that he performed in. His being a jockey, it was interesting. I get the point of it, but I felt like we spent too much time on those elements of it. I just wasn't as excited or interested in that part of it. So yeah, ultimately it was fun, 3 stars. And if you're really into classic sci-fi or classic fantasy, I would recommend this series because it is interesting, it's fun, and there are a lot of ways that you can see this shaping where fantasy or sci-fi have gone in the future. And so thank you, John, for being really patient with me because my reading has not been the best for the last couple of months. And also, I will say there feels like a lot of pressure when you're reading someone else's favorite book or favorite author because you want to look at it from their perspective, understand their perspective, understand their love for it, but then also you have to think about your own perspective and your own enjoyment of a story and what you like in books. And that can be really difficult, because when I was thinking about this from John's perspective, I can totally see why he would love this so much. And then when I was thinking from my perspective, I'm like, I know that John and I are different kinds of readers. And so it's interesting to see what other people are reading, and I liked having that experience a lot. Guess who fell in? I really look as tired as I feel. Okay, it is time for a book haul. And while I drink my coffee, because I think that I could be in trouble this morning. But I got a lot more books this week than I expected, and so I'm excited to be sharing a bit of a book haul with you. Oh, first I have one non-bookish haul thing to share with you, and that is my friend Shamania, who lives here, sent me a gift because the spring term is coming to an end. We were both going to the same school, and she just wanted to share a little bit of spring joy with me. And so she sent me this beautiful flower pot to go onto my desk. I think it's so cute. So you probably saw this in my TBR video, and it's just adorable. And we're friends now. The only issue with it is it doesn't sit very flat. So whenever I try to put it on something, it rolls. So I've got to figure out how to make it sit a little more flat so that if I put it on my desk, it just stays there and doesn't fall over. But look how cute this thing is. I just think it's so weird and adorable. And it's giving me the flower vibes, which I need. So I know that's not bookish, but I wanted to share it with you anyways. Then I actually got this really impromptu set of books from a wonderful subscriber, Leanna, who's been following me for a while and always is really active in commenting. It was a wonderful surprise to get these books in the mail. First we have, hi Amie, I was excited to see this title on your wish list because I just picked up Legends and Lattes for myself recently. I've heard it's a cozy fantasy, which just sounds delightful, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely, it does. And I don't remember where exactly I heard about Legends and Lattes, but I did hear about a couple people talking about it by Travis Baldree. This gives me sort of like World of Warcraft vibes. I don't know if World of Warcraft's cozy, but it just reminds me of some of the cute little towns you go to, and you go into like the inn at these towns. You know, you get to create food, drinks, they have all kinds of things you can create in World of Warcraft. And so it reminded me of that. And so I was like, oh, this looks like so much fun. And it just sounds like fun. I like the idea of a cozy fantasy. So thank you so much, Leanna. I am super stoked about this one. And then also, hi, Amie and Sharon. So this is for both Mom and I. I wanted to share one of my favorite books with you. No pressure to like it. Rabbit Cake is a quirky, dark comedy. Hope you enjoy and read when the opportunity arises. From Leanna. So this is Rabbit Cake by Annie Hartnett. And it's really cute. This is like such a cute cover. And it does sound really quirky based off what I was able to read on the synopsis. I wasn't able to really understand what the book is about from the synopsis, so when I get a chance to read this, I will give you a better synopsis at that time. But I'm really excited to check this out. So thank you so much, Leanna. I can't wait to try out one of your favorite books, and I hope I enjoy it, of course. I really do. I just think it looks so cute. Okay, and then as you probably saw, we have a Magda visiting us, and she brought a whole bunch of books to share with us. So first we had our Christmas presents, and my Christmas present was The Ship of Shadows by Maria Kuzniar, and this is such a beautiful book, and this is about some of my favorite things, ships. And these are pirate women. This is so beautiful. I can't even. I know it's glary, but it's also really shiny. Look how beautiful that is. I just think this is stunning. And I've heard of this book. I've heard really good things about it. This is about the Ship of Shadows, which is crewed by an all-woman crew, which I think is really exciting. So with female pirates. This is a middle grade, and yeah, I don't even know if I want to share this with my kids because it's too pretty. That's just mean, isn't it? And then for Mom's Christmas gift, Magda got her these 3 books by Kay Harper. Nope, Kay Hooper. We've got Hiding in the Shadows, and Out of the Shadows, and Stealing Shadows. And these are all about a psychic detective, I think. No, it's a psychic that helps the LA police catch killers. So Mom's really into all things psychic. Well, at least she was in the past. That was a big thing of our, like my upbringing. Mom and my grandma were really into learning about the psychic world and stuff like that. And so like anything that has nods to that, Mom really has a fun time reading and enjoys. So I can see her enjoying these a lot. And it sounds like fun. So at some point I might read these because I tend to want to read whatever comes into the house. So this is for Mama, but you know, one of these days I might read it too. And then Magda was doing a whole bunch of unhauls. So she was unhauling a whole bunch of Nora Roberts trilogies. So this is the Sign of the Seven trilogy. The first one is the Blood Brothers. The second one is the Hollow. And the third one is the Pagan Stone. These are all part of the period when Nora Roberts started getting more into like magical realism and fantasy and stuff like that. She still has a lot of romance in her books, but she sort of steers towards the magical realism and the fantasy elements in these books. Then we've got the Three Sisters Island trilogy. First we've got Dance Upon the Air, Heaven and Earth, Face the Fire. And I think these are about witchcraft, and I think I might have actually read this series at one point a long time ago. I'm not sure. I've definitely read one of her trilogies that's all about witches, and I really liked it. So this will be fun to revisit if it's one that I already read, or just read it for the first time if I haven't. And then finally we have the Key trilogy. We've got these 3 books. There is Key of Light, Key of Knowledge, and Key of Valor. And I think if I remember, Magda said these are all set in Ireland, and I'm guessing they have something to do with the key. But it's really always fun to get these books, especially Nora Roberts, because Nora Roberts is a very quick, easy read, and so it's like a very good palate cleanser. So when you're looking for something that's interesting and fun, but not too in-depth to read, like you need a break from all the other types of books, Nora Roberts is always great to pick up in that case. So I'm really excited about these. We got a whole bunch of new books. And in my excitement talking about all these new books, I forgot to say thank you so much, Magda. We're so excited that we got all these books, and we can't wait to get to them. Okay, so you won't have seen the video about this yet, but I do have a video that I'm gonna have coming out that's talking about the Not Safe Workathon readathon that I'm gonna be participating in June. And I'm really excited about that. And what I had decided to do, because there's like 30 prompts for Not Safe Workathon, and I've also been having a hard time with like reading 5 or 6 different books at a time, is that I'm gonna pick a prompt as I go. So I will pick a prompt, I will read that book, and then I'll pick another prompt. So some of these prompts I've doubled up on, and so I may have to just pull out another one if I end up on one that I've doubled up, but then that'll mean I can just say, hey, like I already finished this prompt and I can cross it off. You'll see in my next Sunday sum up if I've picked more books aside from the very first one. The first day of the readathon is June 1st, and that's when I'll be starting this. So I'm gonna pick the first book that I will be starting for my readathons on June 1st. And some of these are gonna be ones that overlap with my other readathons that I'm doing. But if you wanna know how all the books are gonna work with the TBRs for my readathons, stay tuned. I will have 2 videos actually coming out for my readathons. I wasn't planning on doing 2, but we're gonna do kind of a little special one for one of the readathons. It's time for me to pick the very first book that I'm gonna start out the Not Safe for Workathon with. And I will be starting this book on the 1st. So then once I finish this book, then I'll move on to the next one. Okay, I've got all my prompts in here. I'm not looking. Go with this one. Leaky Tits. Read a book from a publisher or author that's milking the industry. Okay. This is Illuminae because of J. Kristoff. Oh, I feel like is milking the industry quite a bit, actually. So here it is. I'm actually probably going to start from the beginning again because it's been so long since I last picked it up. But this is such a quick read that is actually a really good one to start the month out with and to start my readathon out with, because once I get this one finished, for one, it'll be off my TBR because I've had this one started for so long, and I can't wait to finish it. This isn't just by J. Kristoff, it's also by Amie Kaufmann, and it's a YA sci-fi, and the most distinguishing feature of this is that it is all mixed media. It's mixed media, and it's very fun and interesting. I really like the mixed media component of it, so I'm gonna enjoy this. I'm gonna enjoy this being my first read, and I feel like I'll finally get it done because it's been sitting on this cart for so many months. Okay, so yesterday on the 28th of May, I finished my 7th book, which was the audiobook The Shadows We Hide by Alan Eskens. This is the second book in the Joe Talbert series. I recently read The Life We Bury, and I was like, I want to continue on because I enjoyed it so much. So this one was also narrated by Zach Villa, and the narration was really good. It was still, I don't know if it was just as good as the first one, or if because I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as the first one, the narration didn't seem quite as perfect as the first one seemed. It was still really good. Like, Zach Villa does a very good job of narrating. I did enjoy this. I'm gonna give this one 4 stars. It was really good, and it got really, really good towards the end. Like, if the whole of the book had been as great as the ending was, it could have been closer to a 5 stars. But there were things about Joe Talbert this time around that I wasn't as crazy about. And, you know, I like dynamic characters. I like characters that grow. Joe had to learn some lessons, and that's understandable. For some reason, it just didn't hit me as well, or I just wasn't happy with Joe Talbert. I guess because we'd gotten to know him so well in the first book and liked him. He just felt like a different character this time. And you know, we all go through periods in lives where we have to grow and learn from new things. He felt different. In the end, I liked where things went, but it just took a while for me to enjoy this one as much because of the changes in Joe. And so that was difficult. And I know that a lot of people have said that in the reviews, like saying that they just didn't like the direction that Joe took this book. And I can agree with that. I didn't hate that element of it. It didn't bother me too much. The last book I gave 4.5 stars. This one I'm giving 4 stars. I still really enjoy it. I really like Alan Eskens' writing style, and the suspense and the twists are really good. Like, I feel like there were a lot of twists in this. And this one, I didn't guess everything. He makes it always seem really obvious, like the twist seems like it's going to be obvious, but then adds in extra twists here and there. And so I feel like you might guess part of it, but usually you're going to not guess everything. And in this particular story, Joe Talbert, the character we had met in the first book, is basically finding out about his father, who his father has never had any part in his life whatsoever. In fact, his father's a total jerk. His name is also Joe Talbert, but he's called Toke. And Toke's found dead, like he's found bludgeoned in the head. Joe hears about this and is like, I didn't even know I had a father. So he goes to do some research because apparently he finds out that he has a half-sister that is in a coma based on the same scenario. Whatever happened, his half-sister's in a coma. So he wants to go and see, for one, he wants to find out about his father that he never met. And 2, he wants to see if there's anything he can do to help this person who he's just discovered is his half-sister. That's basically what the story is about. And then, of course, the mystery that surrounds the murder of Toke and the situation with his half-sister. So it's not as enjoyable as the first book, but it's still enjoyable, and it gets better and better. I will definitely read the third one. I don't know that I'm going to read it right away in this Joe Talbert series by Alan Eskens. I still haven't decided whether or not I want to pick up the other ones by Alan Eskens. I just wasn't crazy about how the audiobook was for the second Max Rupert book, and I was like, nah, if I do, it'll be physically at some point in the future. I'm not in any kind of a hurry to pick it up. I have picked up my next audiobook. I'm actually going to be reading Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens, and I'm really excited about this one because I've been sort of semi-following Kim from Expedition Through Paige's adventure in reading this because it's taken her and her mom like a year to read this book, and it's part of their Gilmore Girl challenge. And I loved their first Gilmore Girl video. I'm going to link it up here if you would like to go check it out, because I just thought it was so much fun seeing her and her mom have this challenge they're setting together. And they have finally released their second video, which Mom and I still need to watch. So we're going to watch that at some point in the next week, see what next Gilmore Girl adventure they'll get themselves into. But because of Kim's comments and how much she liked Little Dorrit and how much she liked the audiobook of it, I decided to pick that up. I kind of did this strategically because for Aurelium, my intimidating book is Les Mis. and I still plan on reading Les Mis, but I would have to read it by August. It's just too soon. I don't want to read it that quickly. I don't want to read it that fast. So I'm going to be reading it as Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf suggested. I'm going to be reading it section by section, which is there's 5 sections in Les Mis. And so I'll do a section a month. And that feels more doable, and I can enjoy Les Mis a lot more that way because I'm just feeling a lot of pressure with that one. And it's such a large book, I don't want to feel pressure because I have other books on my TBR. So I'm taking that off my Aurelium TBR and I'm putting Little Dorrit on. And it's intimidating because it's a really long audiobook. And the last time I read a really long audiobook, it took me over a year. It's not going to this time, but it did. And also, it's a Charles Dickens. I've only read Christmas Carol. Absolutely loved the writing style of Christmas Carol. Really, really enjoyed it. But still haven't put any other Charles Dickens back on my TBR. And so I'm going to do that. And classics in general are always a bit of a challenge because they have a different vocabulary and they're longer or they're just more in depth. They have a lot more subtle meanings that you need to understand. And so I think Little Dorrit's a great choice for that. And I can listen to it on audio. So for the next couple of months until August, I'll be listening to Little Dorrit. And that's my next audiobook. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that choice. I'm glad Kim and her mom read it and enjoyed it and then, you know, shared that it was a good audiobook because I've started it already and the audiobook is good. I'm enjoying it so far. Okay, so as far as what I'm currently reading, I really want to get Ship of Destiny finished before the end of the month. So that is on Tuesday, and I'm getting close. I have just like 100 pages left to read. So I'm on page 682, and it's become so hard to put this down that last night I was struggling because I wanted to keep reading it. It was so good, but my eyes were just not cooperating. So I'm very close to this being completed, and this is my priority at the moment because it's just, I'm at the point where I can barely put it down. It'll probably be my 8th and final book that I'll finish within the month of May. And considering I really didn't do much reading in May, that's pretty good. 8 is my average on months where I'm in school. It seems like most months, like last month in April, I think I finished 8 or 9, and this month I feel like I barely read it all, but I still finished 8. So, I mean, I'm doing pretty good as far as my average goes. And then I have not picked up Shadow of Night since I did my 30 pages during our sprints. So this will be my next priority because I have to get this done by the 10th, but I think that I have plenty of time to read it as long as I move forward on this once I finish this one. So this will be my biggest priority once I have finished this one. And then finally, I already mentioned the audiobook I'm currently listening to. And then as far as Les Mis, I did mention during that portion that I'm going to be doing this differently. I'm not going to try and push this to be done in August. I'm going to try and do one section a month. So I actually am going to restart this because I want to start a series where I'm going more in depth with classics because I really like classics, and classics tend to require a lot more discussion, and I would like to be able to talk about these spoilery because especially like when I read 100 Years of Solitude, I read that as a buddy read with Liz from For Booking Out Loud, but there were things I really wanted to talk about, like spoilery things I wanted to talk about, especially the ending because it's one of the most perfect endings I've ever read in my life, and I never really got a chance to talk about that. So I think I'm going to start a little series that has to do with classics or literary fiction or something along those lines, and it'll be somewhere where I can talk spoilery about some of the classics I'm working on. And right now I'm working on 3, so it's probably going to be something that's going to be pretty active soon, and it's going to be very informal. I also want the opportunity to take my time and go more in depth with these books and have discussions that if people have already read these, they can join in on my discussion. And we'll see what that looks like. So that's something I'm going to start working on soon. And I think that's pretty much it. You've already seen which book I'm going to be starting my June out with for the Not Safe Workathon. And that book doesn't actually work for any of the other readathons I'm working on, so hopefully it goes pretty quickly. But I think it will because it is a very fast multimedia book. So as far as how my reading is currently going, that's pretty much it. I'm excited how we're going into June. I'm ready for it. And this next week is going to be a busy one with schoolwork. So I'm hoping I can at least get some progress done on this one. This is going to be my priority. So let me know in the comment section down below, what was the best book that you read this past week? Or what was the worst book you read this past week? Is there a book that we should all be warned on? If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see what happens next week at the beginning of June in a new month when school is going to be close to being over. It won't be over yet, but it'll be close. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.